So I guess most people can come to a consensus that Arcane is objectively a good series. It shows in the reviews that people enjoy this, and you can really go on an in-depth review on all the reasons it's amazing, but that's another video in itself. However, I was honestly having the expectation that the series might be a bit mediocre. It was quite unfair to think that way because Riot Media outputs have been outstanding. I always had a stigma about video game adaptations because they usually suck. Video game adaptations kinda turn into a joke these days. Fans of the franchise usually have high hopes of seeing their favorite video game on the big screen, and the possible exposure to the video game, but then it usually ends up horribly with both a negative reputation to the film, but also one to the game to people unfamiliar with it. But Arcane wasn't like that. I can explain the hellhole that is League of Legends, but the series actually got people to play the game, whether new players or old players returning to the game, because there was just so much hype surrounding it. I can't even count all the times I saw Vi, Caitlyn, or Jinx in my games, but it just shows the impact the show had as a whole. But why is this the case, that the game films usually suck, but this was quite the exception? Well, this video will be showcasing why video game films lack in quality and how Arcane differentiates in those aspects. I feel like it's only fair to compare Arcane to films because in its own right, I feel like it has the quality of films. Anyway, let's get right into it. So Wikipedia has a database of all live-action video game films of some very popular franchises. It compiles them all, including their box office earnings and ratings on various sites, such as Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes. I did some math on the Rotten Tomatoes ratings, and found out the average ratings of these films is 25.75% out of 100. Seeing these are audience ratings and the sole purpose of these films is to please the audience, it really shows how unappealing they are. You could probably name some of these trash video game films. I really haven't watched too many because a lot were before my time, but I've seen some like Street Fighter, Pixels, and Assassin's Creed, and they kinda sucked. The first obvious thing you can see about a lot of these films is the obvious cash grab nature of them. This isn't anything about the cinematography, but you can really tell there isn't much passion behind it. An example is Street Fighter. The story just felt really out of whack and it just didn't really look that good. It just felt really cheap, you know. The story lacked any depth with any compelling characters. You can really see the difference compared with Arcane. You can really emphasize the importance of having people from the game studio work on this series because you can tell they are truly passionate about it. Another thing you can tell from these films is they seem to only try to please the target audience. What I mean by that is just the players of the games, and don't really try to exceed that and try to make a compelling film that could please everyone. I feel like the motives behind these films are all wrong. You can tell some of these filmmakers don't really have in-depth knowledge of these games. They either walk too far from the game that it's so alienated like Mario Brothers, or may start to feel stagnant where the film can start to feel stale. You start to see that there is an over-reliance on references trying to compel the audience and push the narrative, but then it just starts to feel so cliche, and you can't resonate with the viewers unfamiliar to the franchise. This results in the film maybe looking mediocre to fans and looking horrible to newbies of the series. We can see something like Tomb Raider applying this. The game was really well received, so there was of course hype going into the adaptation. However, it lacked any emotional impact or any characters that were truly engaging. I feel like they have the hidden expectation that you're supposed to know what these characters are, so they don't make an effort in trying to make them stand out. This results in the movie feeling really dull and lacking in memorable moments. It is also quite unfair to the viewer because I feel like sometimes these filmmakers really still apply the stereotype of your typical gamer. Yeah, maybe it's because the films were quite old, but literally anyone could be gamers, and the massive growth in esports has shown how widely spread it really is. We see usual stereotypes of gamers like nerd or geeky, and this creates a film trying to accommodate those stereotypes, creating a mess of a plot which is hard to take seriously. As widespread as video gaming is, people probably don't want some overemphasized cringe shown to them, and probably would prefer a good story displaying their favorite characters. There's more I can talk about these, but that's not the point of the video. The point is, they are missing the point entirely, but Arcane is able to flip these around to be able to be enjoyed by people. In this case, it was a bit different. We have seen an evolution in video games in recent years, and the series experienced a lengthy production schedule to truly bring the best out of the series. First of all, the premise of the show is honestly perfect to fit a video game adaptation. I feel like a TV series will work a lot better than a movie because video games are often including lore that has been spanning for multiple years, when gameplay games taking multiple hours. And jamming that all into a 2-hour film may be asking too much. For a series, it allows the story to develop at a much more steady pace and can allow for follow-up seasons to progress it even more. It being in an animation style also I feel like fulfills the premise of video games and excels in delivering the fantasy aspect. I feel like with live action films, it is hard to capture that same sort of feel unless you got that MCU budget, but not everyone has that. Animation is closely related to video games, so it fulfills in delivering the characters and stories in a multi-layered facet. This makes the characters not feel out of place, and presents them in exactly the way you'd expect them to be presented. That was the often feeling of these game adaptations. This is not the fantasy you expected to see. It's even these depictions of characters that look completely different to the game. I know this is a bit of a controversial topic, but it does affect the viewing experience personally. I think that one major factor that these films really neglect is the lack of world building seen in these films. I feel like it's such an important part in integrating a universe into a film. I don't know if it's because these films might not even live up to the hype, but the most important part of it is how you're able to immerse people into this universe you're trying to portray to them. Lore might not be the most popular thing about League of Legends. I'm sure most people are completely unaware of it, but they fully utilize the world building to its potential. We aren't just set in one part of the world where characters feel stagnant in that one part. We see characters introduced in different parts of Runeterra. They fully utilize the geography throughout the series, which symbolizes to the viewer what Zaun and Piltover are truly like. It's not presented as Piltover is good and Zaun is bad. It shows the social class disparity, the arrogance of Piltover higher-ups who seemingly can't be touched, and the Zaunites who basically have no rights compared to their higher-ups. We don't stay in one place for each episode. As it progresses, we progress through the city, understanding more and more, and truly getting immersed in it all. This excels in the fantasy aspect. Fans of the game and lore can really feel like they are part of the place. It makes the place feel alive and growing. Characters don't just feel like people in the world, they are people living their own lives. Arcane also transcends in its use of characters. So you play a video game, right? You're under control of the main characters or play characters from a video game. But with movies, you have to juggle having to distribute narrative across multiple characters, while also you have to decide main principles like protagonists, villains, and such. But in this case, Arcane really differentiates and actually excels in delivering to all people. For League of Legends, unless you're a filthy one-trick, you probably have played multiple champions. Arcane strays away from only having one or two protagonists. You can feel like everyone is a main character due to the amount of development each character gets. Linked to the world building, this creates an amazing universe where it feels alive and things are engaging and happening. Everything is connected and not a start and finish story. Each character is engaging and we can relate to them on a personal level. This is where we are able to create noteworthy moments and relationships in the series. And if each episode may tend to focus on a certain character, and does it well, it makes the series as a whole consistently good. Like I said before, you can't assume the audience will know what these characters are like. You must prioritize giving them development, so they don't feel stagnant, and can be relatable to the audience. I feel like the characters are the best part of the series. Arcane was really ballsy in trying to create a story where a large amount of characters are able to push its narrative. Without any interesting characters, it wouldn't be able to fulfill an interesting story. Fans would be easily losing interest. But with the amount of development we get, depth to these characters, their experiences progress them and build them up to be great characters. They treat the characters like people, not just like fictitious one-dimensional beings. They change. The most compelling parts of the series are when characters change, when Powder becomes Jinx, when Echo stands up to her. These create memorable moments, and are able to love so many of these characters. I also mentioned earlier that Arcane being animated fulfills the fantasy aspect of an adaptation. However, this is exemplified by how the creators are able to use the medium to its maximum potential. What I mean by that is how being animated is able to appeal to the audience. The first glaring aspect of this is just how good it looks. All of the characters' designs look really good and make sense. The crazy features on people originating from Zaun symbolizes their abnormal behavior and having to adapt to their environments, and these same design principles of them also symbolizes progress in the series. Things such as Silco's eye, Vander's arm, Jinx's tattoos, Echo's mask are all symbols of their growth. Silco's and Vander's relationship, how those show them hurting each other in the past and their obvious grudge. Jinx's tattoos showing how far she's gone from her innocence as Powder. Echo's mask somewhat symbolizing the aggressive face he had to put up when he was left behind and had to fend for himself. You can honestly just sense the insane passion with the beauty of this series, not just visual beauty, but its storytelling. That's why adaptations feel so empty. They don't feel passionate. They don't feel like love was put into it, but you can tell they poured their hearts into it, and you can resonate with that. One of the most beautiful scenes, for me, was Jinx vs. Echo. The scene, in my opinion, showcased everything good about this series. Being able to show two different characters that are totally different, however both respected a lot. Showcasing the development of these characters from past, present, and foreshadowing future, the world building showing the fun times in Zon to the horror in Piltover. Everything about the scene, the raw emotion, the design, the beauty, this really best shows why this is a great series. It's because of these aspects that make them memorable moments like these. Let's be honest, are there any moments from these video game adaptations that are memorably good? Arcane is definitely not the first good adaptation, but it's definitely up there. Like I said before, fans of a video game don't want conventions of their game exemplified because it just doesn't work in a film setting. Creating a good story with engaging characters is able to drive it, not emphasizing on it solely being on a video game, but incorporating the video game into a running story allows it to be fulfilling to the fanbase, but also welcome to people unfamiliar with League of Legends. And I fully believe this is why the show succeeded so much. Anyway, with that said and done, what are your thoughts? Comment down below. If you want to see any more content from me, please like and subscribe to support the channel. And thank you so much for watching. Peace.